So I'm Tom Remp, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Billings Farm. I've been a Facebook user for about 11 years now, which is terrifying. And I've marketed on Facebook directly for about 8 or 9. So I've seen huge changes. When I first joined Facebook, you had to be enrolled in a university, and now it is literally in almost every country on earth, save North Korea, which is really interesting. But it's like nothing else. It's so pervasive, and it's so all-encompassing, and it's, for a lot of people, it's transcended the internet. A lot of people, rather than checking emails, a lot of my generation just goes straight through to Facebook. And what that means is that just the way people are processing and having access to information has changed and continues to change. And I think that it's phenomenal as a marketing tool, but it's also an incredibly annoying and difficult marketing tool to use well. And there is not one day where I specifically love using it, I would say. I love when a post does well, but it is, for anybody having frustrations with it, and especially for those of you who've used it for a long time and are wondering, where it's heading and why things are not doing as well, it can be scary to feel like you're being left behind, and it's not just you. I think that the important thing first to realize about Facebook is that even Facebook doesn't realize where Facebook is going. Like, they don't get it. Like, they're quite open about that the algorithms, the way they design it, is so different. It's so, I don't even know where to describe it. It's just so big that the information they're gathering makes decisions on its own. So the way it reaches people and the connections it makes are done so automatically that, nobody really knows where it's going. But what I'm going to try and do is just sort of tell you, what's going on with them at the moment, where that's going to head probably, and then, what can we as small Vermont businesses do to survive digitally and hopefully prosper and do really well and help each other out. So if that sounds good, I'll just kick it off. Since I've used Facebook, the numbers have fluctuated wildly. You've seen, even in the past 2 years when I came on at Billings, numbers were phenomenal when we started off, and then dropped heavily, and then are now finally getting good again. We had, I think, the end of last year, I think halfway through last year was just appalling. We lost a huge amount of ground overnight and never really understood why. And, it prompted us to ask a lot of questions about what we were posting and to change our strategy up and, and look at where we're going. To give you some background, when I came on at Billings Farm, they knew they had to do something with social media, but it hadn't really been thought out. We had about 3,000 likes, which is pretty respectable. But they had been left behind with a lot of organizations that had, way more, and had sort of got a 5 or 6 year head start on them. So I was sort of sent into, my mandate was just to see what I could do to change things up. By training, I'm a professional photographer, and I've done a lot of work with copywriting. So I sort of straddle the visual and the written. So fast forward to today, I have a Labrador panting in the background, if anybody's wondering what that is. Fast forward to today, we have about 30,000 followers on Facebook, and we have a weekly interaction rate, which I'll go over, of about 2 to 10,000 a week, which we're really happy with. So, as we talk about Facebook changes, many of you may have heard that Facebook's making really big changes to their algorithm that are worrying a lot of people in the industry, and that will be favoring individuals over even the biggest organizations' content. And it begs the question, which I've heard, every few years, is Facebook dying? And the quick answer is no. I don't think so at all. But every few years, there are scares about falling numbers and people fleeing Facebook. About 3 or 4 years ago, I thought maybe Facebook was going to collapse. It really wasn't producing well at all. I stopped using it for work because the numbers just weren't great. And then it righted itself, and I think it will continue to do that. And it's easy to see why marketers feel it fails, and why it may not be the best, program for them. It's got clunky mechanics. It's got huge amounts of glitches in terms of marketing. All of you, some of you, if you've got questions about glitches you've seen, whether it's a you thing or a Facebook thing, chances are it is a Facebook thing. Grace and I were talking about, Facebook ad glitches, and I think, what did you say they keep thinking you are, Grace? You were muted, but
they keep thinking that I'm trying to sell mortgages or real estate for Vermont customer.
and I think that's a good, that's quite normal. Like, I've seen stuff that's different, but as strange as that. And it's very easy to feel that you're not achieving stuff because you've made a mistake. Well, often it's their network. They grew so fast and they've got so big, and that they don't have a lot of staff per capita, that they can't possibly police everything. And so much of it's becoming automated that they are making a lot of mistakes. And we can talk about that later, but it hurts us quite a bit. It's getting better now, but we went through a period when nothing was launching for about a month, and we had to be really creative and try and get past it. And then the other issues Facebook really has at the moment are it doesn't have tiered advertising. So even if you spend a lot more money than your competitors, you don't get better treatment. So, you have to deal with the same terrible customer service as everyone else, which is irritating to say the least. And also difficult audiences, especially after the election. We've seen a big rise in trolling. And I don't think it's politically connected, but and on both sides of the equation, we've seen a massive amount of negative traffic. And then by no means is it the rule, and I'd say it's still a small percent of our overall content, but it's scary to deal with. We get people saying really mean stuff, and it's often not motivated by reality. It's often people that have never even visited us. And we can talk about trolling later if anybody's had an issue with it, and I hope you haven't. So the problem is for a lot of people that, and the good thing in a way is that there are no real alternatives to Facebook. This is what we've got, so let's make the best of it, especially for marketers. Yes, there are other social networks, and I'd be interested to see, if anybody favors something over Facebook. But none have the breadth of their audience. Facebook has the widest audience of everybody. I think their active users worldwide is about 2 billion, which is staggering. And that's active. That's people actively using it at least every week. And none of the other networks are as versatile for messaging. Facebook doesn't have a character or photo limit, so you can really, apart from being able to bold stuff, and you can do almost everything you want to your marketed post. And when we put things together, we often started with one photo and we've gone to about 12 for some of our big ads, and that's really made a difference because it gives people a full idea of what you're offering and who you are and why that's important. And we really, we found that, use Facebook for what it's good at, move beyond the fact that it's annoying and really say, well, what can it do compared to everybody else? Can I write more? That doesn't always mean you should write more, but it means that, you can say what's important, and then you can back it up with visuals that explain that. And Grace, if I get off topic or anything, just metaphorically whack me with the ruler and just make sure that I'm back on. So in a nutshell, I think the best way to look at the changes just very quickly is just, and I can send this to anybody who's interested, this is the official Facebook communique about a few weeks ago. And I will paraphrase it. But basically, the first sentence really sums up what this means. Because space in newsfeed is limited, showing more posts from friends and family and updates that spark conversation means we'll show less public content, including videos and other posts from publishers or businesses. So basically, their feeling is that Facebook's becoming too far away from people wanting to communicate with each other, and it's too focused on corporations and ads. Really, is the way they're seeing it. You know, they're not differentiating between advertising and sort of roundabout advertising. You know, specifically advertising a product, or what we do a lot at Billings Farm is, which is, you know, giving a sense of us as a place, but not really specifically saying, you know, apart from a vague "come visit us," we're not, you know, pushing our cheese, for instance, you know. And I think that that they're seeing anything from content producers as basically advertising, and that they really want to push you talking to relatives and getting even more baby pictures, which is interesting. So what they've said is that really, frankly, pages may see their reach, video watch time, and referral traffic decrease. The impact will vary from page to page, driven by factors including the type of content they produce and how people interact with it. But I mean, this is not just affecting small people. This is going to affect some of the biggest pages probably on the internet. You know, I talked to a pretty big organization recently, a really big New England one, probably one of the top 5 New England ones, I would say, in what we do. And they said that they're really concerned about what this is going to mean for them, and that they've actually seen numbers decrease. Pages making posts that people generally don't react or comment on could see the biggest decreases in distribution. Pages whose posts prompt conversations between friends will see less of an effect, and we can talk about that later. And they're also, down here it says the other thing, we will get to this, is they are really going to push live video. What it is in a nutshell is that Facebook's been fighting for YouTube against YouTube for years to sort of become the biggest shared video site, and they figured out they can't really compete against YouTube. So rather than competing against YouTube in videos, they've now changed their tack and they're going live, which is why some of you will have seen live videos pop up on your page now a lot. And I've seen that happening a lot more recently. And, you know, that's not being paid. That's just that Facebook's favoring it so much that it's as effective as live marketing, as paid marketing. So I think that live video is definitely something we can talk about. And it's exciting, but I think it's also potentially problematic to get right.
Now, Tom, do you think that some of these choices by them are made to increase the promotional pushes that pages will have to do to get their content out there? Or do you think this is going to affect the actual promotions that you can do through Facebook?
It's hard to say, because they haven't really gone there, because they don't want to upset people. I mean, what they've said is that for now it will not affect advertising dollars. So for any of you who are already using boosts on Facebook, or who have in the past and sort of moved away from it because you felt you haven't needed to, you know, it's boosts should not be hurt right now, and that's a good thing. Whether that's in the going to change, I don't know. You know, I think Facebook sort of is getting a bit cocky, and they feel that they're so big that they can easily sort of ride out the storm, whatever happens. And that's a slight worry, because I think that, for organizations that don't have $1 million Facebook budgets, it's, who are even using, $50 a month, I think it's a scary time, because you don't know whether they're just going to start throttling traffic. But at the moment, they haven't gone there. So that's the good news. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, we were just wondering if that was what Facebook's motivation was, and if they, if they're going to see less, or pages are going to see less benefit from being on Facebook, then won't that ultimately decrease their ad revenues? And you'd imagine a business like Facebook would be trying to get as much money as possible and make their ads as beneficial to the the folks paying their bills as possible.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, the thing is, nobody knows where this is going to go. And just because Facebook's done this doesn't mean they're going to keep doing it. Right. They make changes all the time that do not work. That's why our numbers fall and rise all the time in a wave, because they screw up and then they decide this is definitely the way to go. And I think this is not the way to go. Personally, I think they're going to change tack, because I think you're right that they're thinking that that by doing this they'll get more revenue down the line, because everybody will have to pay for it. But I think people will get fed up and start looking for something else. But yeah, I don't want to go too much into my opinion, because it's probably going to be wrong. But I think it's good to sort of, I find it very interesting as a thought puzzle to work out why the hell they're doing what they're doing most of the time. So a lot of big organizations are going to get hurt in this. And the reason is because even a lot of the really big ones, and I'll give an example in a second, are not boosting, because they feel that if you've got 4 million followers, you don't have to. So Nintendo. I just got muted. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Grace, can you hear me? Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. Helen was off mute and her typing was making her the speaker. So you should be off now. sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, that seems back to normal. Sorry about that, everyone. So basically, just as an aside before I really get into nitty-gritty, for those of you that don't know, we did a viral campaign with Nintendo last year, and it did really well. I think we had 100 million impressions across all media, which was crazy. And Nintendo told me that they don't boost things because they feel like it skews their page and that it unfairly targets people. And I'd always, and so if they don't change that strategy, they're going to get hit, because they're planning on the fact that so many people can view, will follow them, that people will see stuff. As an aside, and as a sort of interesting story, when we launched the campaign with them, we decided to, we were very concerned about getting trolls from the Nintendo thing. And what we did not want was people who were going to, make fun out of our campaign or get aggressive or be an issue. So we made a conscious decision to actually market it mainly towards women when we boosted it. And rather than the traditional male gaming sort of circles, and that was massive. So what happened was Nintendo sent it out to everybody. Nintendo got hit by, I'd say, 85% negative traffic, and they got really badly, I wouldn't say hurt, but it was difficult. They had a lot of people that were very angry with them for a number of reasons, and it aired old grievances, and people used the fact they had a new post to talk about how upset they were with what Nintendo's doing now. And organizations like Nintendo don't always moderate, so it just went on and on. and they had a lot of negative feedback. But we, were very selective with who we were marketing this to, and we, I think, had one negative comment throughout the whole thing. So it really goes to show, that even the big organizations don't necessarily have the best approaches to this. And I think what's important to say about Facebook is, as I'm talking about these huge multinationals, is that is the great leveler. If we're smart, it lets smaller organizations like us compete to a certain extent with much bigger organizations if we're smart about it, if we have good content, if we come up with new ideas, and if we know how to reach out and really plug that. And I think that that's sort of what I want to give you guys, is the confidence to really try stuff and just say, this is a crazy idea, but, let's try it. I've always said that I try and think of one crazy idea a week. I try and come up with at least a month, one thing that sounds mad, but if it works, will really be good. And, and some of the, I think recently we've had one or two of those that have been some of our best content, and they've really got people talking, and that's what it's all going to be about, is getting people talking, getting people excited, getting people asking questions. So, we're not too worried about what's going to happen here at Billings Farm. I mean, knock on wood. We have a very aggressive strategy, and we're producing good content, and, we feel like we're constantly adapting, and we're talking to people, and we're looking at new ways through it. And we're also really dedicated to helping smaller organizations to fend for themselves and produce good content. And, especially in Vermont, I think that's really needed. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions, now or later, that anybody has. So feel free to email or just type them to me. That's fine. So moving on, and if I take too long, Grace, just again, bang a gavel. I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds with anything. And if people want more in depth or less in depth, I can explain something I've said. I can go into more depth, whatever works for you guys. So strategy and, what we can do about a situation. To start with, I don't think there's one strategy that's going to work for everyone. As you look at, I can't give you 5 tips that will completely change the way your Facebook's running and suddenly everything will be perfect. We're really lucky here at Billings because this is all I do. When I came on board, I was doing a huge amount of different things. And then within 6 months or within a year, I was just doing Facebook because we just found that that's A, what I'm good at, and B, makes more sense. And I'm also a photographer, which saves a lot of time and budget. But even doing it yourself, and even with a small budget, I think you can accomplish a lot. I think there are a lot of really good ways to increase stuff. And I'm just looking. Okay, I have a question. Okay, I have a question on an Instagram post and Facebook post, and we will get to that in a minute. But I think, as I said, all different all different platforms have pros and cons. I think definitely, and I think that some people want to put the same stuff out on all their platforms, and my general feeling is don't. Because they're not designed, they're not designed for crossover. There's a reason they're separate apps. Treat it as a separate thing. And if you've got the time, and I think you'll really benefit from that.
Just to interject really quickly,
yeah,
I want to say that we are going to probably follow this webinar up next month with a webinar on photography that will talk about taking photos yourself, when to bring the professionals in, and how to integrate that into your social media. So that probably will cover Instagram a little bit more if people want to just stay tuned.
Awesome. No, yeah. And again, I am a photographer, so I can also comment on that. And we had a few other questions, so I will try and get to everybody's. So the first step is, and this is super basic, so if you already do this on a regular basis, just ignore me. But I want to make sure everybody knows how they're actually doing on Facebook. So I'm going to try and screen share, so bear with me a moment while I figure out how this is going to go. Okay. Okay, so okay, is that working?
Yeah, looks great.
Awesome, good. Okay, great. So this is our Facebook page. So we're going to have a quick look at insights. And again, I said there's probably a lot of you guys do this, but this is all this is your dashboard for everything that Facebook does. One of the first things I like to do is, I don't think it's difficult to say, all these numbers, and obviously I say we're hugely down, and this is by week. And we have had quite a slow week because we're finishing up for the season. But one of the things that I think is really important is to not even understand what these mean, is to put them in context. Because if I compare organizations with, a huge organization, I'm going to get quite confused. So what I like to do is I like to have a range of organizations that I follow. So if we go down to the bottom here, you'll see pages to watch. And we follow about, let me see if I can move this. We follow about over 100 pages. And I'll just give you a small selection. So we follow big ones like Ben & Jerry's, who are actually doing very well this week, all the way down to we follow small Woodstock organizations. And the reason I do this is I like to have a feeling of, who's producing great content at the moment, who's struggling a little bit, and what does that mean? So for those of you who've used this before and who might not know, one of the sneaky things about this on Facebook is that Facebook wants you to think that page likes are the most important, which is completely invalidated by the new changes they're going to make, because it doesn't matter how many people like your page, really. It matters how many people are seeing and interacting with your content. So you see page likes are here. If we go down to billings, page likes are here. The green number in the middle is what percent you rose during the week. So we had a 1.4% rise in numbers of likes, and that's good for us. And this number's how many times we posted. And because we're sort of slowing down, we didn't do too much. Now this one is the important one, and this week ours is really low. This is weekly interactions. Now I'd say we generally go from about 5 to 10,000, and this is a weird one because it's really difficult to see what it's talking about, but the bigger it is, the better. Like, it doesn't always add up with what's on your page. And what interactions are likes, shares, and comments. So it's the people involved with what you're posting out, if that makes sense. And so this is the golden thing on Facebook. This is the important bit. It's anybody it's not just people that are seeing your stuff. And Facebook will also go on, and you'll see this if you put boosts down. Facebook will say, oh, this many people have been reached by your content. And a lot of organizations judge everything on content reach. It doesn't really matter who's seeing it, because that can mean the way they calculate reach is if it's on your news feed. So if you're on your phone and you're scrolling through, and this is just a good exercise, if you scroll through on your phone, 2 ads from organizations or 2 organization posts, it counts that even if you're zooming through as an impression. So it will say, oh, you've reached 50,000 people, but out of those you've only got, and that's a pretty high number, but out of those you got like 200 likes. And those numbers are both, there's a huge discrepancy. So what you really want is you want a big reach number, but you also want as big a possible interaction number. Does that make sense? If anybody has any questions about that, I can explain.
So if someone was building a list of pages to watch, do you suggest that they pick some of their direct competitors, people that they aspire to create content like? How would you suggest?
Great question. So I had a fight with somebody in a museum in California about this, who said, why are you watching organizations that have nothing to do with you, like Orvis and Museum of Fine Arts? Well, I have 3 ways I do this. Number 1, if you see Merriam-Webster's dictionary have some of the funniest posts. They have really good content. During the election, they really upped their game, and they had some of the best election posts I've ever seen. Very, very clever. And they just rode with it. I think their team was given full permission to just do whatever they wanted. So I follow them because I'm impressed with what they're doing. And then I follow, organizations such as Ben and Jerry's, which has a very high engagement number this week. Usually they're about 1 to 3 on average. So I follow the big Vermont ones, and obviously yours freak you out, but and again, our number is usually about 5 to 10. So if you go down, you start to see, a good range of Vermont organizations. Only in Vermont does very well. Visit New England, and it gives you a real sense of who's visiting pages. It's also really important to check back every week if you do this, because sometimes people do really well, and then they, all their numbers came in on a day or two, really good numbers, and then they drop. So it's really important to look at that effectively and really to understand patterns.
And then to use it in practice, if you see a page that's doing really well, are you going and seeing what their content is and saying, well, how can I kind of apply this to what I'm doing?
Yeah, usually, it will let you, if I click this, it will show me the top posts. So it shows me the best boosted stuff from Beamish Museum in the UK. And they always have lovely stuff. And it shows me what this museum is doing, and it has a nice selection of stuff. And I can get a sense of the number of likes they have, the comments they have, and how many shares. So it's quite interesting to do that. And that's good to see what the competition's doing. And if you see a page you think is doing really well and you're impressed by, scope them out a bit and sort of get a sense of why. What are they posting that's different to you? And really go with that. So is that pretty clear, Grace?
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, so next stage, let's go through, just to give you a sense, this is our, the notifications we have at Billings Farm. We have something coming through almost every minute, and it's an absolute nightmare. So it's a double-edged sword, Facebook, because if you start doing really good content, it's important to be able to handle it. And, and I'm lucky because we have quite a good team. Like, we try and get cooperation from, everybody at Billings to put in some things and tell us what they think about stuff. And it really helps. So if we look at this, we're still in, bear with me, I've got like 100 tabs open, which I said I would not. Okay, here we go. So on the left-hand corner of Insights, you'll see People. And again, that's just the Insight button at the top of your page when you're on your page, on your business page. And if you go down to the left, People. And this is interesting. This shows you what percent of followers you have that are male and female, and age demographic. And this is useful just to know, to make sure that you have, I think in general with all of us, you're going to find the older demographics the better ones, because you're not pushing. A lot of people get numbers, and this is especially prevalent on Instagram, where you can get massive followings from 16, 17-year-olds who like that you've got pictures of animals or that you've got food pictures, but they're not the people that are really going to be buying your product most often. Even though they're quite nice to have on, you can get numbers there that really aren't very useful, and it will give you an inflated sense of confidence of how well you're doing and who you're reaching. So I try and make sure that, we really like to see this nice average here, that this is pretty flat. 25% for men is quite high. For us, usually we're quite a bit lower. We're at 20% max. And the reason that's higher at the moment is that we've started really reaching out to farmers in general. Usually we target, as a museum, we target mothers and grandmothers specifically. As a farm, we usually target farmers. So we have probably about 20 to 50 different demographics that we specifically target in any given, probably few months. And then below, this is really important too, below that demographic, below that information is, where are your fans coming from? We obviously have huge amounts from New York and Boston, and what I like here is that the fact we have New York and Boston, but then we have a lot of Rutland, a lot of New Hampshire, and a lot of Mass, a lot of Vermont together, and then some Mass. And it's quite nice because it's a good, we like making sure that we have a good sort of blanket of the state, and with some of you, it's going to be different if you've got much smaller areas, but make sure that you're not that all your fans aren't concentrated somewhere that you are either not selling products to or are not looking at having anything to do with. Make sure this is what you want, and if not, there are, you want to try and market stuff to people more in your area. Now, as I say that, you'll notice on the left we have 631 Brazilian followers. So we launched a post recently of pictures of dairy cows for the dairy industry, and we found that the Brazilian market, which is really going into Jersey farming, went wild for that. We weren't sure what to do with it or whether we wanted that, but we decided, we'll let, we're not going to kick them off our page. They're fine if they join it. And so we had, huge amounts of people from Brazil and Mexico, specifically because of the farming. So if you do certain different things, it's important to try and make sure that, the right people are liking for the right reasons and stuff, which is difficult to do, but it's just good things to think about.
Now, when you're going into advertising and you're choosing your audience,
yep.
Do you tend to go towards like the people that are already paying attention and reach more of them, or are you sometimes looking to break into new audiences?
That's a good question. And what I've done right here is I've gone into create audiences. So let's have a quick look. This is just for a post I did for Valentine's Day. It's not of Frederick Billings. This is just to demonstrate how this works. So, and again, sorry to anybody that uses this and knows it, but it is changing a lot, and there are a lot of cool stuff. And if you need to hurry me up, Grace, again, just throw something at me, metaphorically. So these are right now I've gone into Boost Post, and you'll see it's going to be the blue button below any post that you have. And this gives you the option of putting money on it. So it gives you, wide general is one I invented, but the ones it gives you at the top should be people you choose through targeting, people that like your page, people that like your page and their friends, and then all these ones we've invented, and we have hundreds. So to give you an idea, you were asking, do you want people that already know about you? That depends, because if I go, let's go people that like your page. So these are people that have already liked Billings Farm Museum. So if I go, let's go Vermont. And if this is difficult to see, so I'm going Vermont, and that's just people in Vermont, all people in Vermont right now. And let's say I set a $10 budget. Just to see. It can't even figure out how many people I'd reach because there's not that many. That's a very small select group. So it's often, those are okay if you want something very specific. If you want people that really only know you, but it's going to cost you more money. You're looking at, to be effective, I'd say, 50, I'd say that probably it'll be almost 85% less effective than it would be if you did a wider post that said, for instance, people that, wait, do I have one? Vermont. Yeah, if I had a Vermont 2018, that says, I'd reach, with $10, I'd reach 3,000 people, which is still not very many, and that's just in Vermont general, not people that like our page in Vermont. So the wider you go, the better. And then if I did a very general one, you'd have, this is, okay, Quebec, Montreal, Connecticut, Massachusetts, so all of New England and Canada, I would have, it's not telling me, but I'd say it's at least a third higher. So does that make sense? the wider it is going to be.
Sure. So you chose more locations there. Did you also narrow it down by other factors?
Oh yeah, loads. And I was going to go to that at the end, but I can, now I'm there, I may just well bounce around here for a while. Some of the factors I narrowed down are, let's see if I go into a good one. I'll just talk about it, I guess might be easier. So one of the things I do when I do this are, I'm looking for people who are going to be interested in it, but I'm also going to look for people that aren't interested in it. And what I want is, let's say, I have to think about this, but basically one of the things I like to do is to, and it's pretty self-evident when you go into this, but I look for people that don't appreciate what I'm sending, and I try and exclude them, which I think is fine to do because it makes sure that people getting your message are people that you think would want your message. Like on ours, we as a dairy farm, we started having a huge amount of, I wouldn't say a huge amount, but I'd say at least every day we'd have one or two spammy contents about people, comments about people who were very upset with the dairy industry as a whole and were being very, very aggressive, if not threatening towards what we were doing. You know, we're a small Vermont farm with 30 cows, you know, but still we were finding that because we got such a large Facebook sort of following that we were getting unfairly hit. So we actually discounted people that belonged to certain demographics that we felt were fueling that, if that makes sense. So, you know, we tried to protect ourselves from that. And that can be a difficult thing to do because you don't want to discriminate people. But, you know, if there's certain organizations that, you know, it is some of the more fringe animal rights organizations that can be more aggressive. You know, if you're an animal farm and you don't want people being upset with your content, I think it's perfectly fine to move away from that and you know and just don't go there, if that makes sense. So yeah, Grace, does that answer that sort of question from you?
Yeah, I am. Sorry, I'm getting a few questions in, so I'm just trying to monitor those too. Okay, so someone wants to know if there's like to offer some good tips on selecting or not selecting interests. And I'll also add to that, you know how when you're making an audience, that Facebook gives you that, like whether you're in the good area for an audience or whether it's too broad or too narrow. Yeah. Like, do you trust them? Do you think that's accurate?
I think that, you know, just because it says it's a bad area doesn't mean right. Can everybody see this? Okay. So, you know, and if there's specifics about this that people have questions about, you know, I don't know what everybody's looking for, so I'm just going to try and be quite open, you know. Okay, so let's just keep narrowing it down and see what we get. So at the bottom you'll see, and this is what Grace is referring to, this is our audience like scale here, and it's specific, broad, and then the green, the sweet spot. Right now we have a potential audience of almost 200,000. Then we've selected women between 23 and 65. Now, if I put all, you'll see it gets to 330,000. So that's pretty good. So even, you know, this takes it down. And then let's say let's do a test audience for people that want to buy cheese. So I want people who, and this is, you know, usually I put a lot more hard effort into this. So this is people that have, and this is scary, by the way, Facebook's getting a lot more in depth. So I've just added behavior, and you'll see if I type cheese in, there's lots of different options. There's interests, as cheese. There's lots of different cheese interests, but then there's cheese as behavior. And what that is Facebook has calculated these are people who buy cheese. Now, whether that's online or not, I don't really know. I think it's mainly skewed online, but I think it also can figure out offline too in some terrifying way. So right now, there's 68 million people on Facebook that have a behavior links off cheese, and you can see that it goes behaviors, purchase behavior, food and drink, dairy and eggs. So that's how in depth Facebook has now got to targeting this, and you'll find that on behaviors. So you can, if you press browse, it's the easiest way to find what you're looking for. So if you go browse behaviors and then consumer, they keep changing this, so it's quite difficult, but there's purchase behavior right at the bottom. I think purchase behavior. Okay, yeah, purchase behavior, buyer profiles, if you want coupon users, all of that. It gives you access to different types of people, but it also gives you access to different, let's say I also wanted to do bakery products, and I also wanted to, any of this stuff, health food, so let's say natural and organic. So that's pretty good. So right now my audience has gone down to 160,000. So it's women 23-65. So if I wanted to bring that to 20, you'll see it's gone up to 170,000. Is this making sense to everybody? I'm not trying to get too in the weeds.
It is making sense, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but can you just explain again a little bit about why women? I know it's very common, we do it too, but why are you targeting women?
Okay, the reason I target women is because we find we like relating to a female audience better, because we found that our male audience was statistically more aggressive, and also that because we're a farm and museum, we're a visitor attraction. We found that statistically it was women who were sharing our posts and talking about coming, and then they'd share it with men, and then that would turn into a visit, rather than, it may reach a lot of men, but it doesn't always. Our numbers were lower when we did that. And we also found that male audiences are statistically spammier. So we made the decision to sort of curtail that on some of our. We don't do it all the time, but just on some of the things when we want to market specific stuff for. A lot of times we'll market to mothers and grandmothers specifically, and you can actually target what type of mothers and stuff. It's, this stuff's scary, and I know this is, it's maybe new for some people, but it's incredibly effective, and it is a little Orwellian, but, and it's not everybody's cup of tea, but we found it really works. And then, 100, so you can reach 170,000 people with those. So that's just, if I save that, I'll see with $10, I can reach 1,000 to 2,000 people. With, $50, I can reach, it doesn't know. Okay, it's thinking about it. It doesn't always tell me, because again, it's glitchy. It doesn't always tell me, but that should give you an idea that the more cash you put in, the better it's going to do.
We had a question a little while back. I was wondering if you could go through one of your crazy ideas and how you took that, maybe something smaller that you tried, and how you applied it.
I have that ready. Let's go right now. Okay. Can everybody see this? So this week's crazy idea, or last week's. Okay, so we wanted to do something for the Olympics. So, me and the farmers were talking about, and I work with people. If you have a team, talk to your team about it, make sure everybody's comfortable with everything. I think that's really important. And so I looked at this and I said, let's have a look. Okay. So, we were talking about what we can do for the Olympics. And we did a Super Bowl one that was good. The cow was choosing teams from the Super Bowl. And I wish we did it quicker than we did, because we lost out to people's giraffes doing it and stuff. So it did well, but it didn't do, as well as we'd hoped. But then we decided, let's follow it up the next week with this, which seems ridiculous, but people love it. You know, if you look, we spent, you know, we spent a relative amount of money on it, but, you know, not insane. And I'd say we have, you know, we had 11,000 likes, 600 shares, and we had 135 comments. And of those comments, I would say on average, we had maybe, and I'm looking through these, probably 10, less than 10 hidden ones. And you can see some hidden stuff, you know, and some quite aggressive hidden stuff. And you can, just so you know, you can hide comments. And when you hide comments, the person can't see they're hidden. The person and all their friends can still see the comments, so that you're not going to get, usually you won't get hit by people who are aggressive about you hiding them if they say something inappropriate. And that's perfectly fine to get rid of that. Are you with me so far on that, Grace? Does that all make sense?
And I'm wondering, when you do get increased engagement, like a lot of people commenting, is there practice that you have with engaging back with them? Are they looking for something from you? Do they want to talk to you directly? Or are they just looking to interact with their friends on your posts?
A bit both, you know, and we can look at that later. But now what I'm doing is, underneath your post, you can see the amount of people reached. Now, as I said, reach isn't that important, but if you click that reach, it will show you the entire statistics for the performance. And that's really good. It's really helpful, because what it shows you is how many likes your post got, but also how many shares you got, and what that breaks down to on shares. So the likes from shares, and so it just gives you a really good sense of how many people have actually liked it. And you know, likes a like, it's not too important, but it shows that people are engaging and they're interested. You know, when people comment and share, those are the ones I consider more important. Now at the bottom, we have post clicks of people that made the picture big and you know, and looked at it, photo views. And then underneath we have negative feedback, and this is important to always check. So we had 33 people that hid it, that just didn't like it. Then we had 7 people that didn't want to see anything from us, which is fair. You know, 7 people out of, you know, 105,000 people reached, we're fine with that. And then 0 reported as spam and 0 unliked. So, you know, unliked would be if people unliked your page because they were offended or they didn't like what you were posting. Does that answer that part of the question, Grace?
Yeah, so those are people who maybe just see an ad come through and they're mad at it just because it's an ad, and they probably hide them all, and not necessarily folks that might have something negative to say about you.
Yeah, it's difficult to tell. You never know why people don't like something. I don't take it as a big thing. You know, when you're a smaller page, it can be annoying when that happens, but don't get too worried about it. And then the second part, what we're going to be doing, this is good. Let's go. Let's see. Okay, so if I click on the likes, if I click there, that will actually, let me see if I've got a better post to do it on. Because I've been doing, okay, so if I go into my main post, I love that page here. Here we go. Okay, so as an aside, Facebook is really glitching. They have a thing where it says we boosted this post, but it thinks it says we haven't, because it says, rather than, it used to be you'd press boost and then it would say boosted. Right here, and then you could tell. Now instead it says you can boost it multiple times, which makes no sense to me, but I think it's a way to just get people into putting more money on it. So you can boost it multiple times and it will show up beneath, and that information is the boost. So does that make sense? If some of you may have seen that, and it's just, make sure that you're not boosting something 5 times and for no reason.
Right, they just want you to keep adding money, right?
Yeah, they want you to, but it's almost just a glitch. When they did it, they didn't tell anybody, so we were confused for about a day, and luckily we didn't do anything too stupid. And we talked to Facebook. They didn't tell Facebook help, so we talked to Facebook help for like 2 hours online trying to figure it out, and they didn't know. So, you know, it was quite scary until we finally figured out what was going on. Okay, so here's the important thing: is, let's say you have a good post, and we can talk about what that means. But let's say the post's working, you've got a lot of likes. So what you do is if you click this beneath, you can actually add people, invite them. And I've been banned because we do it so often that it temporarily bans me for a day sometimes. But you can invite people to like your post. Anybody who's not done that, I suggest go back into your old posts and do that. And when we started doing that, we saw a rise of thousands within a week. It was insane. And as I want to clarify, I said before that likes aren't that important. The two reasons why they're really important are sort of your image, and your outreach. The more likes you have, the more impressive that seems. So if you're a small organization with 200 likes, it's different than if you're an organization with 10,000. People are going to trust you the bigger you are on the whole, to a point. And I think that, especially if you're, people are looking between you and a competitor, the more people are like you and the more reviews and comments and interactions you have, it makes you look more legitimate. It's like the equivalent of a Wikipedia page. When you Google a company and a bunch of stuff comes up about a company, you're going to probably go with that one rather than one that doesn't even have a phone number online. So the more likes you have, I think that's really helpful. The other thing you can do is when you boost a post, and we talked about this earlier, you can boost to people that already like your stuff. And the more likes you have, the more people and the cheaper that is. So that correlates exactly into making stuff a lot cheaper down the road.
Now, I just want to clarify, before when you pulled that up and you were inviting people, you said that invites them to like your post, but it invites them to like your page, right?
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Invite some, page. Sorry.
That's such a great tip. I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, no, again, I didn't for ages because and it seems sort of trashy, but I'd find that on the whole, people will like it. And there's something that I can send to anybody interested. There's some new way that they've done that that you can get people to always make sure your content comes in first. And I don't know how that works. So, but that's something I'm looking at.
So we're we're actually up on time. I don't know if anybody wants to stay on and has any questions, some burning questions, but we can also shoot questions over to Tom and have these questions answered. And we're going to follow this up with a recording of the webinar. And then also we can include those extra questions. So please send them along if you have any.
Yeah, and I'm cool staying online for a minute or two, Grace, if that's helpful, just to talk about some content tips.
That would be great.
Yeah, if you go, and feel free if you guys got to get going, that's fine. And again, this will be online later. So I'm sorry, I feel like we've been in the weeds a bit, and I just wanted to spend a minute talking about.
There's so much to talk about. I think that it's always in the weeds, and it's just further indication that we need to have more conversations about this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, one of the things I find that's really, really important is that you're not in this alone. Like often organizations come through and ask, I'm thinking the best way to explain it. Often organizations get scared because they're like, well, how can I produce that much content myself? How can I post something every day and make it interesting? And, oftentimes you don't have to, especially in our industry. If a lot of you guys have like organizations that you work through, or like, for instance, if you attend, if you're a food provider and you attend a farmer's market or you supply to a restaurant, feature their stuff too, but don't just do it. Talk to them and say, look, I'm going to be doing this. It'd be great if you've got anything to share, send it to me via email just to make sure I have it, and create that big network of people. And that's going to make a massive difference down the road, because if you especially for organizations like farmers markets, if there are any of you guys out there, if you share people who are involved with you stuff, that's way better than just sharing a few pictures of people interacting with the market in general. You know, share pictures of food, share pictures of produce, share pictures of where your food comes from. Restaurants can also do that very easily if you're sourcing direct. Same with, you know, anybody you have who'd be a good partner, get their stuff. You know, we share Cabot stuff. Cabot share a lot of ours, you know, and we're trying to do that more with Grafton. And I think that's a really, really helpful thing that all of us in Vermont can do. You know, and same, Grace, with you guys, you know, that's something we're happy to do. And it's, you know, if you have something you want people to share, that it's fine to ask, I think. Okay, I have some questions. Is it okay if I quickly just run through questions? I may as well just run through them if anybody had. I'll just run through them live if everybody's cool with that. Okay, Vicky had asked, when I click invite to your page, do they see Tom Rent or do they see Billings Farm? They see Billings Farm, so it's fine. It's not, that's okay. And I had somebody asking if we followed Cabot. We do follow Cabot. They're just further down the line on stuff, so you maybe just didn't see them. But we follow Cabot all the time. Okay, and how long between content and post? Somebody asked, you know, if you're a small organization, you have to wait 2 days to post. Is that okay? On the whole, yes. You can also... this is something I should have mentioned. A lot of you probably know this, but let's just look at, okay, we're going to look at scheduling something. I think that's probably a good idea, right, to touch on briefly.
Sure.
Okay, so for any of you that don't know, you can schedule stuff in advance. So let's just say, you know, Facebook post, whatever I write, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I type that, and then instead of, you know, I can boost it, which is, you know, we covered, and feel free to do that on this too. But then I can also, instead of clicking publish, I click this button, and I click schedule. So to the right of publish, you click schedule, and then I can schedule it for any time in the future. So that's good for those of you who are busy but know you need to get something that's time sensitive. So for instance, Valentine's Day posts should not go a week after Valentine's Day. So you want to come up with that ahead of time, and then make sure it goes out. Usually I like to send it at 1 a.m, because then if you do boost it, it boosts, boosting takes place from whenever you posted that per day. So the earlier you post it, the more of a full day you get, and it's easy to keep track of how many days it's actually been running for. So that's a good strategy, just to make sure that you're keeping up with that.
Now, I know that common practice was for someone to share a post, some content you've created, and kind of see how it does before you boost it to see if people are organically engaging with it.
Yep.
And is that still, do you think, best practice if you, like, say I come up with something and I think it's pretty fly, like this is cool stuff, but I'm not getting a lot of engagement with it. Should I boost that anyway, just thinking maybe the algorithm's screwy and people aren't seeing it, or should you still wait for people to engage with your posts?
Well, it depends what your budget is. I mean, if you're really on a tight budget, don't, because, you know, it's crazy to sort of go over budget on everything. I mean, my view is, the way I think about it now is that I try and reflect the amount of time and effort content takes me to produce. It's like art. It's like, you know, you're paying for the amount of time it takes to do. And I think it's a good rule of thumb. So if I had to go out in the middle of a snowstorm and get some cool snowstorm pictures, you know, I'll boost those a bit more heavily than I would if it's just a generic cow picture that's not special, you know. But I might still boost that cow picture if I feel that, you know, because stuff like that can fly like hotcakes, and I can get really good numbers for that. But it really depends. I mean, I don't have any exact rules, if that makes sense. But I think, you know, and I think the other thing is, I sometimes boost immediately when that post goes live, because that way, you know, if it's a good post, especially if it's time sensitive, it's going to really do well. And you don't have to just boost for a day, even if it is time sensitive. Once it's happened, it's fine if it keeps going. So our Valentine's Day post, I think, we could do for 3 or 4 days boosted, and then people will still say, oh wow, that was cool. Even if it was in the past, they know it's in the past. But that's fine. Boosting 4 days later is not fine. It's okay to do a day later, and I'd say yesterday was. Or even if you have to, this week was. If there's something important to talk about that you did, that you missed, it's okay. Try not to, but if it's what you can do, it's what you can do. 100%. It's no judgment in this stuff. We're all dealing with a lot more pressing stuff than this. So I think that's a pretty good rule to thumb. So let me just see if there are any other questions. Okay, yeah. And somebody just said, okay, the thing I talked about was if you click follow a page next to like, you click follow, and then if you click down, you can click see first, and that will allow you to see those posts first in your timeline. So it's quite good to have people do that, but I haven't really looked into it. Okay. And then somebody had asked about Instagram posts, and as I said with Instagram posts, I try and keep them separate. I think it's better because they're not really designed for Facebook, and I think that especially hashtags do not work well on Facebook. Statistically, 2 hashtags are okay on Facebook. Any more than that are not. On Instagram, you want an average of 11, I think, statistically. But that may have changed since I looked at. Okay, so I had 2 more comments, I think. So in terms of posting, I haven't really talked about what posting works. Just a few thoughts. There's 2 different types of stuff that I try and do both of. There's brand familiarization and versus pushing a product. So if I want, and we're a different animal from everyone else, I know, no pun intended, but I think that if, brand familiarization is anything like Cowan ski goggles, it may not be specific to come visit us and see a Cowan ski goggles, but it's people saying, this is a company that produces cool stuff and does interesting stuff, let's follow them. And then they're more inclined to come for a visit to see the cow in general. So I try and do a lot of that stuff, and pushing products is specifically stuff like, come visit us on this day and see this. And I think it's nice to get a mix. If you're a food producer, I think you can obviously do different stuff. But I think there's, a picture of somebody harvesting, and then below it, 3 pictures of what they're harvesting can be as powerful as saying, buy it from this place. But don't, if you are selling in some place, make sure to do that and tag them and make sure that it shows up on theirs. That you can say that any place you're producing for is featuring you regularly on Facebook if they are doing Facebook in general, and that you're doing the same. I think that's great, and I think that's how we get ahead. So some of the other things to think about, the good content, and I know we're going to talk about photography, but it's important. If you have any way in getting a good photographer, whatever you have to trade or barter, save kidneys, do it. Because a good photographer makes a massive difference, and there are photographers that will happily help you out for not very much. If you have a good camera, then you're fine. But iPhone photos are okay occasionally if the content's great. If you have a picture that you couldn't have got, the picture by itself is that awesome, where an iPhone picture is going to make you go, wow, that's mad, then use an iPhone picture. But if you have a choice, don't do that. The new iPhones make that a bit different, and they're pretty good, but in general, I just stay away from it. Video is the only thing that I do think video on iPhone is fine most of the time. Because it rather than camera video can be a bit weird. So I often just use iPhone video because it's easier to deal with. And we've had some good luck with that stuff. But again, because they're Facebook Live, which is, I use on my iPhone for work quite a lot, is like getting way more views than general video. General video on Facebook, even with money behind it, it's really not doing well. So as a heads up there. One of the cool things you can do, and I do not think I have it with me, is that they now make mounts for your phone, like a sat nav, like GPS mount, but it's designed to hold your phone if you're showing something. For those of you with animals, it's a great thing to do a live video and just leave it there for 20 minutes of, or even if you're there but not touching the camera so you don't get camera shake, you just stick it to the wall and you can show your chickens running around or your animals in the field. Those do so well. And then people can view those later too. I really suggest those. We're starting to do it, and it's difficult to do, but we really like doing it. Okay, now somebody asked the big question. It's the question that everybody sort of breathes inwards. How do you know likes and engagements on Facebook translates into people coming to Billings Farm and Museum? I don't. What I try and do is I try and ask people, and I try and listen out to people that see it. People often won't walk around being like, oh, I saw you online. But what you'll find is it's the people that come wanting to meet a specific animal for us. And again, this won't apply for a lot of you, but what we find is the people that know about the pigs, for instance, found out either online or through other people, so one of our biggest boosts recently was the pigs, because I wanted to see how many people specifically came to see them, and that was a draw. So, it's really difficult to tell, but I also think, up here, people take a long time to do stuff, and that's fine. So, 6 months down the line, people can finally come and visit you, even though they've been following you for a year. And that's okay, but I was in rugby practice the other day and talking to someone that was like, oh yeah, I know the names of your pigs, and after I mentioned I worked at Billings Farm, so that would have never been volunteered if I hadn't started talking about it. But people are watching often. And I think that it's really, I think that also the brand, and as I said earlier, like establishing that brand is helpful, because even if you're not specifically pushing come visit us, you're still saying who you are and what you're up to, and people really like that, and they remember you. And when you become a talking name and people know what you're doing, they're more likely to come visit down the line. It's not like you're not even looking for this mad rush of everybody come visit you one day. You're looking at a slow, over the next 5 years, I would like people to make plans. And, and that really, really boils down to, we had somebody come visit us all the way from like the west. No, it was west coast of the middle of the country. She saw us on Facebook and flew out because she really liked what we were doing, and that is unusual. But that's when that that is a good day, and that's a day that I'm going to be happy with. So yeah, I think. Is anybody feeling like I didn't answer their question? Yeah. I think that's pretty good. I'm feeling that, I'm perfectly happy. Funny content is okay. By the way, if you can swing it, funny content works, but don't do it all the time. Try and come up with a mix. And the last thing is, live video, as I just said, is great, especially because it pops up even if you don't pay for it. So it's a great cheap solution if you're worried about your marketing budget. Do live video and get good at live video. You don't even have to talk. I think if you talk, it can ruin it. Find something cool and write about what it is and then show it. And if you start getting used to that, that's helpful. You can also post or boost in advance to say, I will be doing live video this time. The only problem is that then you're dealing with live video and that, the expectation of what it's going to be, and that can be iffy. So sometimes it's good just to do a sort of random one. Dog Bless You, which is one of the big rescue dog sites, does a lot of just puppies with their mothers, and they do really well from those. And it's super boring, not very good, just like a camera put on the wall for 2 hours, but people love it. So I think it's it's good. The only the only caveat with that is if you have animals, you know, make sure that if you're doing anything that people might freak out about, that's just normal, or if the animals are behaving in a way that people could be worried about, make sure to explain it. Because, you know, you have to bear in mind that, especially if you're reaching people that may not be familiar with your lifestyle, that this stuff is confusing, and I think it's really important to explain that. So yeah, is that, I think we're pretty good. Is there anything that you guys wanted to follow up with, or if there's anything that people said that, you know, you want more information on, literally anything? This was really fun. So
I was wondering too, maybe you can share some of the resources that you follow to kind of keep updated on like best practices for Facebook, and you know what the latest news is. I know there's something new coming out every day, so maybe we could
okay, you know what I'm doing,
the webinar.
Yeah, I think I'm just seeing if I can, you know what, I have a really good one for you guys.
Great.
That I will attach now. Okay.
And I sent this in the chat, but if anybody didn't see it, we will be posting the video on our website, vermontfresh.net. We'll have it, you can find it. We'll have it linked on our homepage, but yeah, go there, share it. If you
okay.
Want
so this is old, but it's Moz. Moz are really good. They're a paid solution. They're a paid site that do web analytics, but they produce free ebooks, and they're really worth it for anybody who's got the time. This one's about 5 years old. It's on Facebook, but this is a beginner's guide to social media from Moz, and did that show up with everybody, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, use that. It's great. It's also great if you're working for someone that's weird about like getting behind spending money on Facebook when they can, just because they think it's a waste of money. It will tell you how it works and why it's important. It really needs to be updated, but it's just it's good for teaching you how to talk about it, and the statistics are awesome. And they have anything from Moz that you see is great, and use it. And they have a bunch of SEO tools, which is search engine optimization, stuff like that. They have a beginner's guide to SEO I will also post. That's more web related, obviously, but just good stuff to know. You know, this stuff is free. It's top notch, and it's being taught by some of the best companies. So, you know, use it. And if you've got an intern, send it to them, or even, you know, we had a paper copy in the office for a while. It's a good thing just to have to use, and to make it. The more you feel like you're doing the right thing, the more you will do the right thing. You know, I think it's just good to sort of get help and get confidence, and take other people's ideas. And I also just Google, you know, I try and stay up with farm news and see if anything interesting happens that I think is a cool idea, like Nintendo, you know, looking at what people are doing. And, you know, Nintendo was tech news, but it's anything that I see that I find interesting, I write down, and I try and decide whether I'm going to follow up or whether it's a lost cause. So yeah, how's that?
That's great.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, Grace, I might touch base with you guys afterwards if you want. So yeah, whenever everybody's signed off.
Yeah. So if you just want to stay on here, we can.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. That was really great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Grace and Tom, I'm gonna stop this meeting because that's the easiest way to reset to have another conversation.
Okay.
So you're gonna get an email